Welcome to the Intimacy Lab. I'm Michelle Renee, an intimacy guide, surrogate partner, and professional cuddler. We're here to talk about intimacy in a much broader view than what you probably think. Most people think about intimacy as sex. We're going to break that apart here. Welcome to the lab. Welcome back to the Intimacy Lab podcast. We are starting season 3, which sounds kind of nuts to me because it feels like I just did this on a whim not that long ago, but here we are. I'm going to be joined today by Dr. Holly Wood, and that is her real name, as I've wondered sometimes, and I heard you say that the other day, and I was like, oh, that's good to know. I was like, you live in Southern California, and your name is Holly Wood. That's so perfect. I'll ask you more questions about that, I am sure. I'm joined by my dog Dax today because he doesn't want to be away from mama. So if you're watching this on video, yes, my dog has no eyes. It's not that he's sleeping. Some people have asked me that. Is your dog sleeping? How do you know when he's sleeping? I don't know when he's sleeping. But he is very close to mama. What have we done here? I don't think I've recorded a new episode since maybe April of 2024. So I thought I'd do a quick update. Maybe these are updates for you, Holly, too. I don't know. We were on social media together, so.
Yeah.
I went to the Innovations in Psychotherapy conference in Anaheim in October and did a table with Cuddlist, and nobody asked me if I have sex with my clients. And it was so lovely. Like the contrast of surrogate partner world. And even in the cuddle world, people think cuddle is like code for like sex work, and it's not. It can be, I suppose, but to sit in a conference with therapists who know nothing about surrogate partner therapy because they're not sex therapists, and even, let's be real, a lot of sex therapists don't know anything about surrogate partner therapy either. I didn't spend any time explaining what I don't do, and I was like, this is kind of cool, and also, gosh, it leaves me wondering if I have big decisions to make, right? I left there going, do I need to divorce surrogate partner therapy? Is this becoming a liability since I'm not working on the erotic side of the work? And after about 6 weeks, I made sure I slowed everything down and didn't make a rash decision. I hit the space. I get to a place of like knowing where everything in my body settles when I know I've made the right decision. Like I've got to the conclusion. And I hit that in like mid-November. It was just like one thing was said about not wanting to have my work compared in relationship to sex. Like where am I on the spectrum of am I having sex with my clients or not having sex with my clients? And I thought my work has nothing to do with sex at this point. I don't need to be compared to where I am with sex. It doesn't make sense. So it felt a little masochistic if I was to stick with the title surrogate partner. So I dropped it. And it's been a really good decision so far. Shortly after that, I also became the co-owner of Cuddlist, which I describe as like a racehorse being held back for like the last 9 or 10 years of like, I was operations manager for them like 2016 to 2020. And it was always that I don't want to put all my creative energy into somebody else's business. And so I'd hold back quite a bit. And now that I'm finally adopted the baby, I get to put a bunch of creative energy into it, and it feels super invigorating, and it's awesome. So that's kind of how I rolled into 2025 was, what do I call myself now? And I just went back to human connection coach, right? Because it's what I do. It's just I don't work in the erotic side. It's still people to people and the lab, right, of learning how to people better with other people. So that's my update. Miss Holly.
Yes.
Dr. Holly Wood.
Yes.
We've completed the thing.
Finally, yes.
Yeah.
We completed the thing.
Do you want to do an introduction?
Sure. I can share a little bit about myself.
Go for it.
Yeah, so my name is Dr. Holly Wood. As Michelle mentioned, that is my real name. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and certified sex therapist and newer doctor of human sexuality, located in South Orange County, San Clemente, California, where I have a private practice and do a lot of work on the intersection of sex and trauma, So mostly working with survivors of sexual violence, but doing the whole gamut of sex therapy for individuals and couples.
I love our overlap in that, even though we've not shared a client. I'm just going to say yet. I imagine it will probably happen at some point. But so much of my work is in sexual survivors too, sexual violence survivors too, and maybe we'll get to talk about that a little bit. Who knows what's going to come up today? Because what I love about this podcast is I do nothing to prepare, though I know you, right? Like I'm not coming in, we're not complete strangers, but we're not exactly like you're not the person I hang out with on a Friday. Like we've run across each other in person. I think I've come to one event for the Orange County ASEC group up in Irvine. And then we saw each other at the ASEC conference in 2023. You didn't go to 2024, right?
No, I did not.
But I remember when we ran across each other in San Francisco, it was like, wait, is this the first time we're actually meeting in person?
In person.
It didn't feel that way, right? Because we've been on enough virtual things together. So
exactly, enough virtual meetings and being like social media friends and bouncing back and forth. Like I feel like I knew you more, and then I'm like, wait, you see someone in like 3D for the first time. It's like, wait a minute, is that?
Yeah, have we not done this before? Like it's I run into that all the time. So we're gonna play the We're Not Really Stranger cards today. This is one day they're gonna sponsor this podcast. I don't know when it will happen. I regularly tag them in my things, and they should totally sponsor me. But anyways, I do love the We're Not Really Stranger cards. They've stayed my favorite so far, though I don't go crazy in picking up new card decks of different things. But I did see this on my Instagram. Partners Are Human, a game that deepens your romantic relationship. And I thought, I wonder how these would translate into this space.
Yeah.
Okay, so I tried a few of them with a client the other day, and they're very mononormative. Like in the sense of like traditional monogamy, like almost like you're telling a secret. Who do you turn to besides me when you're in a tough place? Like do we not all have layers and layers of people? Like it reminded me of
to talk to.
Yeah, it reminded me of my first marriage, where you were supposed to have this one person that was like holder of all your secrets, and outside of that it was some form of like emotional cheating or something like that. So I'm not sold on that deck yet.
Got it. So have you tried, speaking of card decks, have you tried the Skin Deep? Those are the ones that I go to.
I put the app on my phone at one time, and I did a little bit, but it was before I started this podcast, and I didn't look at it from the same lens, so I'd have to go back. But those were probably the first exposure I had to these kinds of cards. And then I think the next set, Lou Hansen, who's a surrogate partner and LCSW over in DC, she turned me on to these, but she also bought, before I did, the Esther Perel deck, the Where Should We Begin, or Where Shall We Begin, or whatever it's called. Again, I like these. I've stuck with these. So Esther's deck is fine. No shade on Esther's deck. But I stick with what I like. So our first card is the perception level, and we'll both answer the card for each other, and then we'll go on to the next one. Do I seem like someone who would get a name tattooed on myself? Why or why not? And I'll answer it about you, and you'll answer it about me. And we don't know each other well enough to know if we have tattoos. Well, we might know if we have a tattoo, but we might not know all of our tattoos. Right. So
I can go. I get the impression that you might, because it seems like I feel like getting the tattoo of somebody's name is just like a very like deep loving thing that you can do, and you seem to love very deeply. However, I think you love so widely and so broadly that if you did, you would just be covered in like so many lovely, wonderful people that you have connected with.
Now I'm like, oh my goodness. Like my thought was like, hell no, I'm not getting someone's name. And other than like my mom, like I eventually will probably have like I have a desire. My dog is sneezing if my mic is picking that up. I have a desire to get a tattoo of my mom signing "Love Mom" from like a gift. And I haven't done it yet. Not because I just don't have the follow through to like make the appointment. Like somebody else, I literally have one tattoo, and it's because my Michigan wife made the appointment for both of us to go in at the same time and get the matching tattoo. Otherwise, who knows? It probably would have never happened. So that is a no. I do not have a name tattooed on myself, but. And I would have said absolutely not. Like I'm of that. You don't put boys names on your body, like that kind of thing. But you give me a really lovely idea though, is to have almost like a sign-in sheet somewhere for like the closest people in your, like, just, I don't know, like a memory wall or something. It's an interesting idea because I don't know if I can put it on camera here. It's weird to get. It's a backwards thing. It's a dictic, which is a little antelope.
Yes. Now I see it. Yes.
Yeah, it's very strange to try to show it. It's put on my arm for me to look at it. And my Michigan wife, who's like one of my best friends, which is why I call her that, we have the same tattoo because she has stage 4 breast cancer, and she asked me if we could do some kind of matching tattoo. Her initial thing was like lobsters because they mate for life. And then my husband yelled from the background, "Friends lied to you. That's not true." It was a Friends episode situation thing. And so we went to a list and we ended up with a dictic because I'm a 13-year-old boy at heart, and it makes me laugh that I can say I have a dictic on my arm. It is cute.
Love that.
Somebody said it is the most wholesome tattoo, right? So I could see having something like that, but like an arm of like people's names, but only because you suggested it. Like I never would have thought about it, and because I'm really terrible at following through on tattoos, it's probably never going to happen.
Right.
Maybe Sharpie, like temporary tattoos. That will probably be the closest I come.
Or like when you're like in school and you get a T-shirt, everyone like signs your T-shirt on the last day, like something like that.
Yeah. Now for you, I'm thinking about different, and this is, again, it's all about perception. And so I'm going to do like all these like weird tropes. So like, I know that you ride a motorcycle or you've had pictures of motorcycles. So I'm going to do a total stereotypical thing.
I'm going to jump in real quick because my partner will not let me live this down if I don't. We don't ride a motorcycle. We ride a Harley.
Of course.
There's
That's
a difference.
Very different. Thank you for correcting. I don't want to get anybody on me for this, whether it be your husband or somebody listening. But so I'm going to do the total like stereotypical. Well, because you are a motorcycle girl, I'm going to say that you totally are covered in tattoos and we just can't see it because you're a blazer, and that you definitely have your husband's name tattooed on you.
Yeah, that's like really biker, right? Like to have your husband's
why
name
not? Either
tattooed
your
on
mom or your partner, right?
Yeah. Good. So, I do have names tattooed on me, but not my husband and not any other partners in my life. Because similarly, I'm a no-go on a partner's name. That's like a kiss of death. Like, no for me, no thank you. But I do have my brother, my sister, and my great-grandparents tattooed in like a memorial because they had all passed away. So I do have those family members tattooed. And actually, my husband, right before we got married, showed up with the Hollywood sign all across his forearm. So he has mine.
But he can play that off if anything was to go.
He could. He was like, "Oh, I just like
I'm a big fan.
No one's buying that."
I always thought we have joked, the advisory panel for Cuddleists. We've been a group of people that have been together for a long, long time. And we've talked about coming up with a matching tattoo that's Cuddleist related, but not like branding ourselves in like the logo, but something like the oxytocin's molecule or something that's kind of related to our work that we could all do something together. I don't know, in some kind of weird commitment ceremony kind of thing.
Yeah. The first thing that came to my mind was like the avocado, because that's something that you use a lot, or avocado, right?
Yeah, I'm ready to go buy like little nail art stickers on Amazon and start taking them in for my pedicure. Like I've lost it with the avocado thing. It's for a longest time people would buy me, like clients would buy me gifts and stuff, and they would buy me like vulva related items, which I love. But it's interesting, it's now shifted to avocado, which is more, I guess, I don't have to devulva my space as much for like my work is not in the sex world anymore, so I don't keep that stuff in my office like I used to. But I used to have to devulva my office before my in-laws would come because they would stay in it as our guest room. And my mother-in-law does not want to look at a bunch of vulvas. And then I got into Soft Cock Week, and then I started getting gifts of penises. And again, I'm happy with avocados.
Yeah.
Like they're just I'm good on the penises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Avocados are so tasty.
More vulvas, never a problem. Like I will definitely, you showed off your Wonders Vulva pillow on a call yesterday that we shared. And I have mine, and I will hold that as a dear tool forever. Because how often do you, I mean, people need an approachable representation to talk about their vulva or their partner's vulva. And it's not that I don't cover those conversations in my space, but it's not where they rest their head during a cuddle session. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you use yours a lot in your work? I'm assuming it probably comes out quite often.
Not much. Like, not as much as I'd like to. I think she needs to come out more often. It's nice to kind of show a little bit of like anatomy.
Gotta expose her.
She doesn't come out as often. And the other thing you can't see is I have like a huge painting on my wall of a vulva that my husband painted for me, actually. And it looks kind of like the Virgen de Guadalupe, like that's beautiful. And sometimes I'll like tour and show people my office, and this is also a guest room, so people sleep in this space.
Yeah, I mean that's I guess with working virtually, pulling out a puppet isn't quite as helpful as if they were sitting across from you in a in-person session. So the pluses and minuses. Yeah, I want to kind of in that same sense, instead of a vulva though, I want to do like it's a little different, kind of an ode to Emily Nagoski as like the Virgin Mary of like have it be just worship her a little bit. But
yeah, I like it.
Okay, are you ready for? Have we done? Yeah, we answered both of them. Okay, so level 2 is the connection level.
Okay.
What's been your happiest memory this past year? So we'll say 2024. Or up till today. It doesn't matter, but I have to think about it.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one.
You have one? Do you want to go first?
Yeah, it's the loudest memory that my inner child is screaming at me right now. So I'm just going to run with it because we know they rule the world anyways. I'm such a like therapy geek, and I read all the books and polyvagal and all the things, right? I was at this conference that I mentioned, Innovations, in October, and we're sitting there on a Saturday morning in our onesies because Keely and I have decided that the last day of conference, we're always going to show up in our onesies. It's a weird kind of like, come in, be professional, prove yourself as a professional, and then just be a little lighthearted. So we're sitting there. I'm in my avocado. Keely is in like, I think they're dragon onesie or something with 6-inch heels. It was a wild combination. But that's how Keely rolls. And this older woman walks up to the table, and we get to chatting about our work and professional cuddling. And I do what I always do. I scan for her badge to see like, where are you located? Is it somebody from Southern California? I should connect you for like happy hour if you're in San Diego. Like I do all these things that I'm always like, where do I place this person?
Right.
And I look at her name tag, and it's Deb Dana. And I don't know if you know who Deb Dana is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just go, oh my God, you're Deb Dana. And Keely goes, oh my God, Michelle talks about you all the time, which is not true. I mean, that's not true, but I think Keely was very smart in saying that. I'm not going to be mad about it.
Mhm.
But it was just one of these moments that was like, oh my gosh, like you came to talk to us.
Mhm.
This is so wild. And she was so supportive. And she's like, you guys should be training therapists on this. And we're like, well, we're
Mhm.
not therapists. So she's like, talk to Pessy. And we're like, well, we can't do that for Pessy,
Mhm.
but we will talk to other therapists about putting
Mhm.
together some kind of triadic model thing. But just inner child wise, I was just geeked out because
Mhm.
all these years of going to these conferences, it's like Comic-Con for me because I'm like, oh, I'm
Mhm.
going to see this person. I read their book, and I'm going to see this person. I read their book. And that was just a wild, wild experience for me. So that's my favorite memory of the last year.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I think for me, I'll just go with, yeah, what is standing out as like the loudest is my daughter's first birthday. So we have lots of exciting things, and that trumps getting my PhD last year. It
Well,
stands out more, which is
you were cooking them both at the same time, to be fair.
two babies exactly. But yeah, we just had my daughter's name is Rebel, and so we had Rebel's first rodeo, and just so many people showed up, and we live kind of far from a lot of people, so the fact that everybody like came out and made a huge deal, and we just got to celebrate her, and we had trouble even like getting pregnant the first time. So to be able to celebrate that, like we made it this far, and we not only does she have so much love around her, but me and my partner have so much love around us because of how much everybody shows up for her. It was just a really, really special moment, and that's something that stands out to me for sure.
Did you have that like first cake moment for her and that first birthday?
I made the cake, everything. So yeah, a little pink cow print cake was a mess. She cried though over the piñata because she didn't want to. It was a horse, so she didn't want to
Aw.
hurt the horse, which is sweet and nice. So
As a therapist, then you're like, how did this imprint on her and where will it show up later on in her
exactly right. I'm
therapy?
like, uh.
That's funny. The things I'm glad I didn't know, I think, when I was a new mom versus what I wish I'd known now if I could go back and do it over again with my kids. Like, I would not have been I was a cry it out mom. And now what I know about attachment and all that, I'm like, oh my gosh, like my sister was so right doing the attachment parenting stuff and how I would, go back and do it differently. But
Yeah.
there's a time.
Yeah, it's so hard. There's always so much information coming out, like more information like this style of parenting, this style of parenting, this bit of research, this bit of research. And I think so many moms get like shamed over like like no matter what you choose, like somebody's gonna have a problem with it. So I've been trying to just really let all that go, be very present, try and tune into what feels good for us, and like also be mindful of the American Academy of Pediatrics because I do believe in science, but otherwise, yeah, it's all just we're all just figuring it out.
They don't come with a manual, as they say, but I feel like we do have more manuals now in a weird way, like with the internet. And like you said, not all of it is even scientifically backed. And
right.
Yeah. Well, I would say as she gets older, and you have a second one coming too, right?
I do.
Yeah.
I have a few months left before another one comes.
Yeah, that'll be fun. But as I get older, I think that the thing that I wish I'd done more of then, I did a little bit of it. I wasn't completely absent of it, but apologizing to my kids, I think has made a huge difference in what our relationship looks like compared to like my parents, who I don't remember getting apologies from. Yeah. That's my interesting look back.
I think that's so important. Like even like thinking about my own experience growing up and like my relationship with my parents, I think generationally it has been difficult for like older generations and parents to like admit when they did something wrong, almost because not like they're denying it, but like they can't even face it themselves because of like the pressures for them to be parents. They can't face that they did something that could have possibly caused damage to their child. And so I think there's like an avoidance of taking responsibility or apologizing. And so I imagine that is so healing for the relationship that you have with your children.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't modeled by their parents either, you know, and so somebody has to break the curse.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. The reflection section.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think my defining characteristic is?
What do I think yours is?
And I got to think about yours. I picked this and now I'm like, what am I going to say?
And you knew ahead of time.
I know.
You had an edge.
I did. I just like picked them out before. I usually do it right on camera. Like, but then I end up going, no, we did that one last time, or and like and I'm like, I don't want to do that. So
I think I have one for you based on my impression of you and how little or much that we know each other. But there's this like word that stands out when I think about you, and it's connector. Like you are a connector. I'm also curious what your zodiac sign is.
Oh, I'm a
how that
Scorpio.
aligns.
I'm a Scorpio.
Oh,
I don't know if that means anything. I don't follow much of that.
I don't think they're particularly connector. I'm a Scorpio also.
Oh, okay. The only thing I relate to around Scorpio is like I really have to catch myself from just like burning shit down. Like I will just like set the place on fire on my way out, and that's like not my most proud characteristic at times.
I can understand that. I can relate to that.
It's like that's a Scorpio trait.
But yeah, you're just like, to me, you are a connector. Like you are somebody who, like, even when you mentioned, you know, the first thing you do when you're out at these events is like scan for someone's badge. Where do I place you? How do I connect you with somebody? The events that you continue to put on, the meetings you hold. It seems like you always know somebody or have a resource for something. Which is something I really appreciate about you. And I love that about you. So that's what stands out to me. Is like you are a connector and a relationship builder.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. I do take a lot of like, I don't know, maybe it might be just a coping mechanism of like, how do I make sure that I'm important, or how do I make sure that I'm remembered, or, you know, that same kind of like my core fear is being invisible. Like I've done a lot of like, have you played around with existential kink at all?
No.
Oh, it's a pretty good book. Although I've had a lot of people go, I'm surprised that you liked it, Michelle, because it's a little, they go, it's a little woo-woo for you. And I'm like, yes. The premise of it is that you take like these core fears and you eroticize them. And so they actually had like a guided meditation that was like a masturbation meditation. And I had an amazing orgasm off of my fear of being invisible, because I turned it into like, what if I was invisible, what would I do with that power? Right. And I could be very voyeuristic. And it was a very interesting experience. I've never gone back and tried it twice. But I think it's a very interesting read. And so that's what always comes up for me, is like this fear of being invisible. So
yeah. Well, I think it's like there's like a light and a shadow side, right?
Sure.
Like I see like the light side of this being connector, relationship builder, and then like the shadow side is that is like maybe it comes from a place of not wanting to be invisible.
Yeah, I was invisible in my family. I still am. But yeah. Okay, so your defining characteristic. The thing that keeps coming up, and if I knew you better, it might be something else would stand up further. But because of the kinds of connections that we've shared, what I think about is your approachability is the big word that comes up for me. And I think you're very relatable. Like we've done some, you were doing a study as part of your PhD, and I participated in that. And yeah, I feel like that's the thing that's coming up the strongest for me, is that you're very approachable and relatable.
Thank you.
And I think in sex therapy, that's so important, right? Because you're asking people to be the most vulnerable, at least in here's how I see it. Like, I was just talking to somebody the other day about this. In regular general therapy, a lot of therapists are really uncomfortable talking about sex. And I think they should follow that discomfort, because if they're uncomfortable, we don't need them making a client situation worse.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So while I'm upset that you haven't worked on your own sex shit, right, that you can't hold that space for your clients,
Right.
don't try to hold that space if you haven't worked on your sex shit. Right? And so as a sex therapist, I just think that you get to see a different side that people really struggle to share outside of your space. Because I know I've held that space for a lot of people, and I'm not a sex therapist, but like, if people feel safe with you, they will tell you those things. And they come to you looking for a place to talk about those things. And I think that says, I think that, I imagine if I was picking a sex therapist, approachability and relatability would be really important. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that sometimes, which is, I think, maybe comes from my own like thing of not like my shadow side, or like this own like trauma of like, I feel like I'm not always a people person. Like I maybe like I think I maybe have this fear of like not being liked. And so to hear that people find me approachable and relatable is really nice to hear.
Yeah.
And of course in the work that I do, I love being able to hold space for people, and that is just like I am so honored every day to be able to hear some people's deepest, darkest secrets and fears and parts of themselves that they don't share with anybody else. So that certainly my work I appreciate, and also just because you volunteered this information to be able to witness your story and your participation in that research was, again, I'm honored to be able to hear those things from you, from everybody else who comes to my office or participates. So thank you.
Yeah. And same thing in working with that group of people in my work, and you work with that same demographic. I just think it's such an honor to help, at least in my work, a lot of my work is helping those clients learn how to trust themselves, right? Or in some of that starts with trusting me, but ultimately I want them to trust themselves. And I just, I can't get enough of that kind of work, because it feels like I often describe it as like not the darkest side of sexual assault. Like I'm on the recovery side of sexual assault. And it's like, yes, you've had this horrific thing happen. And how can we start to create some different memories? Not that they're going to replace those memories, but in a way they have something different to attach to a sensation or something. So example, I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but I have a client that one time she talked about, she has a hard time showering because the washcloth feels very abrasive and reminds her of her father. And so we did some kind of exposure therapy around that, of how could we help change that sensation correlation, right? And to me, that just feels so good to be on the other side, where I can, like, people say, gosh, it's such a heavy topic, Michelle. How do you deal with these stories? And I was like, because I'm on the side where I'm like helping them create a new story. And that just feels, I don't know, that feels so an easy yes for me.
Absolutely. And like similarly, something that's been coming up a lot lately is like people have asked me like, who do you like to work with? And like, this sounds like a really terrible way to frame it, but what comes up is in particular women who feel like they're broken, because getting to the place where they see that they're not broken and having that transformation is the most like rewarding experience for myself, certainly being able to bear witness to that and support them through that. So I think a lot of people get the impression like, oh, it must be very sad. Like you said, how do you deal with that? It is certainly sad, like hearing these are terrible stories of things that people have been through, but seeing them grow and transform and like create new memories and new paths for themselves is why I do this work. I imagine why you do the work.
Yeah, that it's like a form of payment in some ways, of like, I take so much pleasure in seeing the next phase of their life. It's really great.
Yeah.
My dog is licking my arm pretty intensely, and I'm wondering what the sound is going to be like on the mic. But anyways, Anything else you want to talk about today? What do you got coming up? I know you've got a YouTube channel you're launching.
I do. I'm really, really excited. I feel so embarrassed like saying this out loud. Like again, maybe going back to my fear of putting myself out there, right? But I've been wanting to play around with YouTube for a long time, just as someone who consumes YouTube all the time. And now I'm, in my 30s. So it's like I'm a geriatric YouTuber, even though I know that that's not that old, but it just like in YouTube world, it seems like it's geriatric. But yeah, so I'm, just gathering content, putting together a YouTube channel that's going to launch in the beginning of April on April 5th called The Hollywood Sexologist. And it's just really exciting to be able to put together accurate, evidence-based information for everybody. And it's interesting, going back to when you use the word approachable. I just recorded the trailer. And so one of the things that I express is like, my goal is to make this information accessible and approachable for people so that they can get real accurate information, which I think is also so important given the current political climate and what's happening in the state of the world, to be able to access accurate information and for free. And again, to reach more people, to help them realize that they're normal and not broken. So this is something I'm super, super excited about, just to be able to share more stuff with people.
Is it going to be like interview or just like you talking, like you sharing a topic, like any ideas of what the content is going to look like?
Yeah. So as of right now, it's mostly just me talking head videos about different things like types of desire, how to like increase desire, things around erection functionality, things around health benefits of sex, how mental health impacts our experience of sexual pleasure. But I think, like to incorporate some interview style things, maybe have you on there one time. I was thinking having Aubrey Lancaster out there to talk about some asexuality stuff, bring in people, because I might have a lot of information, but also there's so many, I'm connected to so many wonderful brains who have like so much more information to share. So if I could get other folks who might want to talk on there with me, I think that would be great too.
I think having more and more stories that are outliers, like I think it's really easy to like what is normal. If it's happening to you, it's probably normal, right? Like there's such a variety. And I think about when you talk about Aubrey, and Aubrey and I have talked about, wouldn't it be great to put a panel together of people that are identified as asexual to share our own experiences and how they differ? Because I think we get very locked in of what asexual means. And like, I didn't figure out I was asexual until a year and a half ago. And I'm turning 50. So like so many things I've figured out about myself in my 40s. It's been pretty wild. But it's so frustrating to hear people go, but you have sex, so you must not be asexual. And I'm like, and that's not just from like laymen. This is like from the therapy community and our colleagues and things like that. And I'm like, like it's about sexual attraction.
Right.
And then we talk about I'm highly responsive desire, and all these things kind of piggyback on each other. I would love a topic. I'm just going to throw this out here as a special personal request. I would love a topic on how GLP-1s are affecting people's sexual desire.
Oh, yes.
Because I've heard multiples. I asked my doctor. I'm doing all my perimenopause care through a telehealth company called MIDI. And I was talking to my doctor the other day about this. And she says some people have an increased desire on a GLP-1. And I've always just assumed that because it's killing my pleasure center around food, that it's killing a lot of my pleasure centers. And so I'm really curious in the sex therapy world, what's showing up in offices and stuff like that. Because I'm living it right now and I don't know how to counter it and I won't give it up. So it's more like how to work with it than just abandon ship.
Sure. No, and I'd be interested in like the relational impact, because I think, like, as well as I do, that there's so much of desire also is dependent on relational aspects. And I've seen more recent research about how GLPs are affecting people's relationships, right? Like if you're experiencing negative side effects that you have, you're uncomfortable, you might be irritable, that's impacting your relationship, or even just the way that we think about food, right? Food has been something that brings people together. We
Mm-hmm.
break bread together. And so that's having an impact on how people are relating.
Weight loss in general. I went through bariatric surgery almost 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they warn you right off the bat with bariatric surgery that there's a high divorce rate. Right. And so there's a lot of layers that happen. And it's been really interesting to have this like smorgasbord of like multiple things colliding at the same time between like realizing the asexuality. And I was in a conversation with a friend yesterday. He goes, but how do you think knowing this has changed something for you? Because it's not like you're different. It's just that you know different things. And I described it as like, I now I can tell you when I look at somebody, I pay attention now of what do I want with them rather than just seeing a draw to somebody as meaning sexual attraction. When I really break it down, my draw to somebody is, I want to be close to you. I want to know you really well. I want to have physical contact with you, but I never am like, oh, what would it be like to have sex with you? Like that one doesn't cross my mind. I didn't have that pieced apart before. Right. So it's just, I didn't know what I was working with before because I was just kind of like, this must equal this. And that's what that is. So throw that together with the GLP-1, the perimenopause, like I upped my testosterone. That didn't up my libido. Like it was just, it's this lovely, in the worst, not lovely way. It is a very frustrating combination of things. And I think there needs to be more conversation around the GLP-1 components for sure. Because I hear a lot of talk about the perimenopause component, but throw the GLP-1 on top and it's interesting.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah. Definitely. I will start researching.
Yeah. We're doing a fun experiment in my household right now. My husband suggested the other day, because I was saying to him, I'm really struggling with getting to like, I think maybe what I want right now in sex is a lot of receiving. Like I maybe want to parse my sex out to be less about reciprocal pleasure and more about one directional, whether it be only receiving or only giving. And he just goes, I have an idea. Do you want to do an experiment? And I was like, I love experiments. And he goes, this is like towards the end of January. He goes, how about for the rest of this month and all of February, everything has to be for your pleasure. That means you have to ask for it. Or if I ask for something, it's for you. Like, I would like to do this thing, but it's only for you. So only say yes if you want to receive this thing. But I want to encourage you to ask for what you want, which is what I teach. It's not like it should be that hard. But I do find that we're a very independent couple. We do our own thing unless it's date day for the most part. Like, I don't ask him I don't say like, oh, I have a coffee date with so-and-so. Is that work okay for our schedule? Like, we are very separated. And I said to him, okay, but does that mean even things outside of sex? And he's like, I think so. Because I like in Wheel of Consent work, we do a lot of talk about, but what do you want right now? Rather than like, what should you want? Or what did you think you'd want? It's like, but right in this moment, what do you want? And so I said, what if I want to ask you to watch a movie with me? Can I ask you that? Which I avoid doing. And he's like, yeah, you can ask me that. I said, food? He's like, anything. And so I had watched like a TikTok about some pizza place. And I was like, oh, now I want pizza. And he goes, you could ask for it. And I was like, ooh, could we get pizza? And he's like, I'll even go pick it up. And I was like, great. And so I find myself asking these things, but what I find myself not asking is for the sex. Right. And so I'm only a few weeks into it. But what I've noticed is that I notice myself that I should ask for sex. And because I'm being very diligent about just being about what I want, I'm not doing it just because it's a should. And it's a month. We're going to see how it goes. So I did ask for sex once.
Okay.
So it took about 2 weeks or so.
Okay.
that I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to say yes to something and ask for it. And so I did. But it's a really fascinating experiment. I'm curious to see what the end of the month look back looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love
But
a
not
good
a lot of
experiment.
people would be up for an experiment like that. I really appreciate my husband for suggesting it because I don't think I would have asked for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It
Yeah.
sounds like you have a good partnership there in which you can do that. Like you said, like wheel of consent, like the giving and the receiving back and forth like that, even just having that conversation and expanding it beyond the bedroom.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much shitting was happening. You know? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I won't go back. I think after the month, my guess is that I'll go back to like, you know, I think that responsive desire component is that I know that I have to get to arousal before the desire shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to do some of that. Not should, but I want to, even though I don't want to. Right?
Like so, and I talk a lot about this with in my own this is similar to my own experience and like with the folks that I work with, right? Like this idea of like the willingness model, like what is the willingness that I have to preheat the oven, so to speak, to get myself there? Like, do I want to? Like, not really, but I know once the oven's preheated, I am gonna want to throw something in there, right?
Right.
But so it's like, how willing am I to turn it on at this moment?
The want to want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think that's where relationship dynamics can start to really affect that want to want. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So many little lines to pull. It's like defusing a bomb and pulling, I don't know if that's the right term, or unwinding a ball of yarn or something, right?
It's there's a little safer.
Yeah, maybe not a bomb. That's probably not a good plan, but yeah. Well, I look forward to your launch. I already RSVP'd, so
Yay!
I will be there. Yeah. It was good to have you here today. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, they can find me online at thehollywoodsexologist.com and then on social media everywhere, Instagram, on YouTube at The Hollywood Sexologist.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you, and maybe we'll see you again here, or maybe I'll be over there. Who knows?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it.
It was fun to get a little intimate with you.
Yeah, same.
Yes. Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to comment, pose a question, or learn more about the guests often featured on the show, visit us at intimacylabpodcast.com. Please also take a moment to review us on your favorite podcast app. It's one of the best ways to show your support. As for me, you can find out more about my work at meetmichellerenee.com, as well as on most social medias at meetmichellerenee. Let's connect again soon.